Welcome to part 2 of a relationship with money.
Yes. Now, this had to be a part 2 because somebody was very excited about what they found. And I'm all about like being excited and having the energy flow. I mean, like, all right, let's do it.
No, I'm so excited because when I did my show notes originally and I knew that we were bringing Myra on, I just like delved into this thing about our relationship with money, specifically the psychology behind it. And I know that in part 1, we talked about how like our financial relationship stems from our childhood. And there is a financial psychologist, Brad Klontz, that basically says that these instances actually develop money scripts. And these money scripts are shaped by our direct experience, family stories, and parental attitudes. And so not shocking that these 4 psychology money profiles are deeply steeped into our childhood. So I when I came across this, I told today, I was like, this might have to be its own episode because it is fascinating.
And so here we are, and here you are, and you're going to learn about these 4 different types. And then we are going to share with you, if you are one of these types, what you can do moving forward as well. So I'm actually really looking forward to this conversation.
All right, let's go with spender. I'm going to let you take the lead on this one.
So we're starting off with the spender profile, which you might be a spender if you get a rush or a high when you're purchasing items. You purchase items for family and friends to demonstrate how much you care. You might be an impulsive shopper. You may have accumulated some considerable debt. That one I'm going to put a little asterisk on. And always waiting for payday. So those are some indicators that you might fall into the spender profile.
So I'm piecing this together. I know that if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see me pointing at Cydia because as I was compiling these, I saw where myself, Cydia, and a few other people kind of fell. And, you know, when we're talking about being a spender, and if you identify as a spender, what I was really interested in was the psychology behind, like, where does this stem from? So if you're a spender, there's a good chance that you either grew up in a home where you may have been spoiled, and so your parents gave you presents, like you never went without. You felt so loved and supported through these gifts. So you chase that high by continuously spending on yourself to continue that feeling of support and love. Or you grew up in an extremely frugal household and you felt denied of things. So you overcompensate by treating yourself to anything and everything. And what was interesting about this though, too, it's like your emotion of remembering what it felt to go without. So you demonstrate that you care to others by buying them something so that they don't feel as if they're going without.
Yes. And so what I would say, those are 2 black and white for me, because I do think that there's another element on here, which was we were poor, like we were poor working class. And so there were times where, yeah, my parents would buy and spend on things and really just not care. Like, I mean, they spent a shit ton of money on my quinceañera. They should not have. I'm judging them for that decision that they made at the same age I am now, by the way. Dating myself and them with that, but also at the same time just feeling like there were certain things that you couldn't do because for example, like I was a cheerleader in high school and it took quite a bit to be able to get the uniform, but like I didn't have the full uniform. And so there are pictures that I have from high school where I've only got bits and pieces. I was definitely denied. And then it was like, oh, you did really good. We're inviting you to go to this other competition or parade or other things where there were other opportunities where I could do more because, you know, I'm just so good at all the things and super humble.
Absolutely. Definitely one of your strong suits.
Yeah. But then it was like, well, we can't afford to do that. And so that was a constant recurring theme in my childhood of, oh, it's really nice that you're being considered, but we can't afford to do it. So like it was what happened with my ballet lessons, what happened with my piano lessons. At some point, my dad entered me into like a beauty contest. And again, like I would get into all these things. And so it would be like dangled. And then it would be like, oh, that's nice. That's too bad. We can't afford it.
And how do you think that has influenced you as a spender?
I think the way it's influenced me is that I don't necessarily think about the long-term consequences. And so I will do things. I'm definitely a impulsive shopper. You put some of those little things in front of me, like, at the cash register. I'm that target audience. Like, I'm definitely there. But I do think that just that sense of denial of, oh, I can't do that. I got to a point where it's like, well, I don't have to deny myself anything. I'm, fairly well off financially. I've done well for myself career-wise and done all those things. But I've had to learn, hey, I need to not be in this mindset where I'm constantly waiting for payday. So I think I may have started off as a spender, and I still mostly lean towards being more of a spender, but I have adopted some other items from my other half, who I'm curious as to which one of these profiles you think
you'll
he is.
Definitely come across. You'll figure it out once we get there.
Once you start going through the different things, but I feel like I've evolved as I've been able to do it. But in the beginning, it really was, I can do whatever I want. Like, I always had cash in my pocket as a kid. And then when I was waiting tables or working at the pizza place, again, always had cash. But I would also always run out of money. I ran out of money every single semester of school. Mm-hmm. I would be the end of December. It's like, well, this really sucks because I'm waiting for financial aid. And I would just overdo it. And my little brother and I ran out of money when we were backpacking in Europe. And we ended up spending the night on the beach. It became an experience, but it was because we ran out of money and we didn't have enough money in the currency at the time. So yeah,
so I know
spender for sure.
I know that's, being a spender might sound negative, but I have to say that there are strengths of being a spender. And I wanted to be the one to share this because this absolutely is Cydia. So spenders are extremely generous, and they do make other people feel special because of the just because gifts. And they typically enjoy life and live in the moment. So would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know I've talked a little bit about my people pleaser. I think that comes in here as well. But I'm not necessarily going to hold back. I do more, but yes, I'm very generous. And there's something about that. And I think that the mentality there I got from my dad of like, I'm not going to take it with me. Like, we're not taking any of the stuff to the grave with us. So what's the point? And so that philosophy of being able to enjoy things in the moment. Yeah, we were poor, but damn it, like, we took so many people to their first concerts. We spent a lot of money on concerts and music and experiences because that was what was of value to my parents, particularly my dad. And should he have spent a ton of money going to concerts? That's a judgment. I would say, some people would say absolutely not. Like, spending $400 to go see the Rolling Stones is stupid. Others, worth every single dime. I spend money going to my experience for my supernatural conventions. It is not cheap, and it's worth it to me every single time.
Interesting. So I know we talked briefly a little bit about the strengths of your generosity and like being able to live in a moment. What are some maybe problems that spenders might experience?
So I think it's time for us to move on to the next profile here. Now, you know what? The big problem, I think, is definitely what it's talking about with controlling what you're doing. And I think sometimes overdoing it. And I mentioned this in the last episode where I did make a purchase and I got really excited about it. And then I forgot and I didn't even see that it was there. And I've had that happen multiple times. I know you forgot about, a $10 subscription. I have forgotten about many of them. So now I put those in my calendar. I'm like, oh, I need to cancel this subscription. So I've given myself tools, but it is something where I can overdo it, or I will forget that I bought certain gifts and, I picked this up on this trip. And then, years later, like right now, I literally have bags in my living room that need to go to people of things that I've just decided, even if it's not Christmas, we'll call them late Christmases, whatever, where I just need to get them out of the house to where they were meant to go.
Absolutely. And I think one other thing that they had mentioned is that spenders have a hard time saving and planning for things like retirement. Is that something that you've experienced?
I have gotten better with it. And I think a big part of that was the student loan debt. The student loan debt really helped me learn, and also being with a totally different personality style for myself. Matt is very focused on retirement and on living well in retirement, not extravagant. Like he lives way below his means. We live way below our means, and we do things that are a little bit crazy because of that, because we're able to look at it. So I can see the benefit of being future focused with money, and I have the ability to do it. I just, sometimes I need to rein myself back in again. And so with having my own business, cutting ties with the firm that shall not be named, all of those things impacted my finances for last year. And then I decided to be more like a different personality, one that we'll talk about on the different profiles that we have here. So it can be a challenge, but you can learn what you need to learn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the second money psychology profile is the saver. So you might be a saver if you tend not to buy anything new. So if you find yourself shopping at thrift stores or haggling items on OfferUp, this might be you. You'll also tend to argue an extra dollar on your receipt if a cashier forgets to honor a sale that's going on. You eat at home every night rather than spending money going to a restaurant. And you'll have several household items broken all at the same time, yet you refuse to have it fixed because it still, quote, and I quote, it still works. Who city does this remind you of?
It sounds vaguely like Matt, just a little bit. And he does have these tendencies. He doesn't. Here's where it's interesting. He will buy things brand new and won't go like thrift shopping. He hates yard sales. And it's a really interesting thing because I'm like, when we first met and we're starting to date and we started talking about money, one of the things that impressed me about him was he was not looking for the cheapest shoes at the store. And he needed to buy some tennis shoes. He was looking for what was comfortable. And then when he found it, he bought 2 of them and he wasn't sweating it. And so I think that when there are things that are going to provide more comfort or are going to be long-term investments, he has no problem buying the top-notch item.
Okay, but how long does he hold on to those shoes?
Oh, he will wear them down.
Okay.
Yeah,
so one tennis shoe might last 5 years?
No, but there's a nice little stockpile under the bed. So
the psychology, again, I'm fascinated by it. So the psychology behind savers can stem from that perhaps you grew up in an environment where you felt every penny needed to be pinched and accounted for. So perhaps your parents lost their job or had their car repossessed. That might have stuck with you. Or your parents may have been extremely frugal and showed you that, you know what, you don't have to actually have a lot of money to live on, and so they make the dollar stretch further.
Yeah, his parents have the same pairing that we do. So his dad's the spender and his mom's the saver, and he learned from his mom. Like he's so aligned with all of it. And it's funny because one of their family jokes is their dad came home one day and bought a second house.
Oh. As one does on a Saturday.
As one does. And she flipped out, which I mean, why wouldn't you? And this was, I think, in the early 80s. And what's funny is that now that has built their wealth because that is what they did. They ended up buying a bunch of properties and are essentially landlords, and they have all of these different houses, and I mean enough to give each grandchild one in their will.
Jesus.
But it started off because the spender did something impulsive, came home, bought a house, and then the saver was able to use that and go, all right, how are we going to do this? And it became really the foundation of their generational wealth that they're building.
And you spoke to this earlier. Actually, one of the strengths of a saver is because they stretch the dollar as far as it can go, they often have a pretty healthy nest egg for themselves and are well set for retirement, which you said Matt is.
Matt can retire in the next couple of years. He could probably retire sooner had he not started dating me, is kind of the running joke at the house.
Well, he also is one of the rare people that love his job.
It's funny. We were talking yesterday and I asked him, I was like, what would you do if money was no object? I just asked that question because I think it's a good one to ask from time to time. He's like, I would probably do the exact same thing I'm doing now. I was like, really? You would still show up to work and do all this stuff? He's like, yep. I was like, it really didn't surprise me that much. Like, he's like, well, what about you? And, I would be doing different things than what I'm doing now, which included a whole lot more travel and volunteer work. But
interesting.
That's another topic for another day. So yes, we are going to be fine in retirement because I'm very fortunate to have this, even though we have our rough patches, and I joke about that stuff. And if you're following us on social media, you know that there's some funny things that we're throwing out there, but overall we're gonna be fine for retirement because of him. If it was just me, I don't know. I'd be working until I was dead.
I found this to be interesting with the problem that savers typically experience. And I don't see the first one being an issue with Matt, but if you are a saver to the extreme, sometimes you will forego purchasing, maybe healthier foods or higher brand foods, or maybe you neglect going, to the doctors because you're like, it's just money. Like, I'm fine. I'm healthy. Like, I don't need to go to the doctor. And that frugalness can actually creep up later and cause more problems for you down the road because you've been neglecting yourself now. The one that I found to be slightly interesting is that their savers' frugalness often bleeds into other other facets of their lives, and they could be stingy with their emotions, feelings, and energy.
That's not bad at all.
I'm just going to leave that there.
Anyways.
Others can perceive you as holding back rather than giving.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. Totally not mad.
So, now that we've spent half the episode on Cydia and Matt, let's go ahead and turn things around, shall we? The next psychological profile is the security seeker. If you are the security seeker, you hate debt of any kind. Your retirement investment accounts are very non-aggressive because you hate risk. Yay for cost bonds, I'm sure. You stay in a job you don't like because it's stable, and you avoid risks at any costs. Does that sound like anybody that we might know?
That is absolutely me. Absolutely me. And I literally can hit off all of those. Absolutely. So why don't you delve into the psychology behind that? Why
please.
don't you?
I will. So the psychology behind the security seekers, this comes from growing up in an environment where your sense of security felt threatened. Maybe your house was foreclosed on, car repossessed. Myra mentioned the lights being turned off at her house, like those kinds of things. And so whatever the experience was, it scarred you. So you got some money trauma is basically what it comes down to. And it left you believing that money equals security and that you needed to keep your assets liquid, baby, just in case. And so I know that this was something that even Vince had mentioned to you about the fact that you have a lot of cash in your checking account.
I do. Even my financial advisor told me, like, you're holding on to too much cash. And I think that's because I'm always like, well, what if this happens? So, like, you look at the pandemic and, my husband lost his job. So I was taking on, the bills and everything like that. And it felt so nice not having to worry because I had this ridiculous emergency fund. So I'm absolutely a security seeker. I remember in the first episode where we were talking with Myra, like, I shared stories of, my mom, divorcing my father, and she was left with like nothing. Or, the fact that at 16, I'm having to learn how to budget to feed my family for the month with just like $300. Terrifying. And I just remember telling myself, like, I will never be in that spot. I will always make sure that I have enough money to take care of myself no matter what happens. Now, I might go a little bit to the extreme, and my financial advisor is trying to get me to, take on stocks with higher risk, but I'm just so risk adverse because I'm terrified of being vulnerable. And that goes with my money as well.
And that makes total sense. And yet here I am buying cryptocurrency and being okay with some of the things, although that's another nightmare for another day.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you definitely have that risk averse, but the strength of that being that you're super stable and prepared for an emergency.
Absolutely. I absolutely am. But there is a problem, though, with security seekers such as myself, because we are so risk averse and so fixated on security that we miss opportunities for growth, new investments with large returns, careers that are more fulfilling, because we like to stay with what we know. So, when you talked about earlier about staying in jobs that, that you may not be happy with, but you know what? They're stable. They're providing me an income. Absolutely identify with that. Because I'm at a point right now in my career where it's like I have several avenues of opportunities available to me, yet I'm very much comfortable with keeping one foot in with, my current job.
I'm curious, how much of it do you think is your security seeker versus your perfectionism?
Security seeking. Absolutely. I didn't realize until we started talking about this, or decided that we would be talking about this on the show, that I realized how deeply rooted my money trauma stemmed from, and how many instances and experience I can recall as a child that reaffirms this fear. So there you go.
Security seekers. Okay. Well, we got that one. And then the final profile is the avoider. You might be an avoider if you have a stack of bills on your counter and you don't know what's in them. You have no idea what your credit score is. Retirement, who? What? You're not even thinking about that. And you are afraid to look at your bank balances.
Absolutely. And so the psychology behind being a avoider can stem from what was fascinating about if you're an avoider, there is a very good chance that you came from a family that struggled with some sort of abuse, whether it's alcohol or drug abuse. And so as an avoider, you interpret this message as a young child that escaping is a valid way to avoid problems and conflict. And so, avoiders typically in these type of households have grown up in where money was not something that was talked about. And so now you may not even feel comfortable about addressing it at all. But I kind of think, though, we talked a little bit about this in the first episode about money, was that we just as a culture don't, like, money is a taboo thing. Like, you don't tell people how much you make. You don't tell people where you spend your money. Like, that is something private.
Right. So I think this profile can be encouraged. And I think even with businesses, like I have a lot of friends who are accountants, not spicy accountants, like actual accountants, and they are their clients may not even look at their books and stuff until the end of the year. And this was definitely me with the business side of myself. Like, I wasn't looking at any of this stuff, and then when I had to sit there and go over it with my accountant, it was like, man, this felt really vulnerable to, like, look at all these things and realize the mistakes that I was making. And I knew that things weren't going exactly how I wanted because I hadn't adjusted, but I have adjusted now, and I'm doing all of the things, and that I'm like, we're moving this, we're changing that, we've changed things with production, like I'm radically changing things because I know that I can. So I feel like the avoider one is one that I identify with right now, but I know it's not my main source of, I guess, trauma or my main psychological profile. I think with any of these, I think you could probably have a little bit of all of them, but especially in our society where we don't talk about that. We
hush
don't
hush
talk about money. No.
What was interesting, so you might think like an avoider, there can't be possibly any strength behind this, but they typically are optimistic because they believe that everything will work out in the end. They also typically, like spenders, live in the present moment and find anything and everything else about life more interesting than money.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I really identify with that because I do think that there are so many things that are much more interesting, and that the saying, money can't buy you happiness, I think that's true to a certain extent, because there is a certain income level, which it used to be 75. And as we were researching for these ones, I came across a different number saying that now the number's 95.
Jesus
I'm not
Christ.
Sure. Yeah. Where when you make anything more than that, you don't become any happier with it. But there are things that money can help buy in terms of experiences that can increase your happiness. So you may have more access to tools, education, travel, all these other things. So money may not make you directly happy, but it can help you have other things that would make your life more fulfilling.
Oh, absolutely. I think that the obvious setback or problem with being a avoider, though, is that, yeah, you might temporarily avoid problems by avoiding them, but you're just actually delaying the stress that you're going to have to deal with. So the longer you neglect a situation, the bigger mess you're going to have to clean up.
And that's true for anything that you're avoiding, not just your money issues. So how do we move forward if you have identified yourself in one of these?
I'm glad you asked. So if you are a spender, here are two of many ways that you can move forward. One, stop using a credit card. I think I mentioned this in episode 1. There was a study conducted by MIT that found that shoppers spend up to 100% more when using a credit card rather than paying with cash. Knowing this, it might be better to implement things like Myra mentioned, the envelope system, which is the second suggestion, which is do the envelope system. Cash out your paycheck. Start putting the cash in various envelopes and only spend with what's in that envelope on rent, on groceries, on whatever it is that you've allocated to that envelope. And
so I'm going to throw in something here for spender, as a spender.
As a person that identifies as a spender.
As a self-proclaimed spender, which no one is surprised by. Like, literally no one is surprised by this. Here's what helped me was starting off with actually looking at everything. And that's really what started my, saving habits, was really just writing everything down to figure out, where the fuck is my money going? Where is it going? And so just that act of it, and there are different apps out there that can help you out. I started off using the Mint app and mint.com, and you link your bank accounts to it, and it shows you how to, where is all your money going? And you can then get like percentages of like, okay, 30% of your money is going towards housing, and, you're spending 50% on entertainment. And then you can be like, oh, that might be a bit too much. And then you can start adjusting things. So the biggest thing with the spender is, just like it would be for an avoider, you got to look at it. You gotta do it. As painful as it can feel, you have to do it, because you cannot change it if you do not know what it is and if you have not brought awareness to it.
No, I love that you're bringing that up, because again, like we mentioned in the previous episode, talking about just like automatic subscriptions that we maybe forget to cancel and are being charged. Looking at your bank and your credit card statements not only puts a figure to, a number figure to whatever it is that you're purchasing, but you might say, you know what, I no longer need that subscription. Or, it just helps, I think, being able to visually see, like you said, where your money is going.
Exactly. And so if you are a saver, enjoy the fruits of your labor. Okay? You have the opportunity to do this. It's okay for you to spend a little bit of money on yourself.
I like that you're saying that, because as you talked about your father and, these concerts and experiences that you two were building together, it wasn't a tangible item, it was an experience. My family would always say, like, you can't die with your money, because I do have some people in my family that are super frugal, and we could never really understand why, because it's like, you can't die with it, use it, enjoy it. So I think you said, like, just savor life,
Mm-hmm. And I think what's interesting is that knowing that I have lots of savers in my life now, I want them to experience their stuff. And so it's funny, because Matt sees his parents taking another cruise. He sees his inheritance going down, and I'm over here like, yeah, do it, go for it, go enjoy life. Like, my mom tries to kind of be a saver, but she's not really. It's like, I don't want any money from you. Not that you have any to give me, but I don't want any.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather you use it than somehow think that you're going to give me something and then deny yourself in the present. That doesn't make sense to me.
I think also savers need to just realize that their time is valuable. And the reason why I say this is my grandmother-in-law will literally drive all the way across, like from Las Vegas to Henderson, to save like 4 cents a gallon on gas.
We don't go to 4 grocery stores on the weekends to shop all the ads.
But this clearly will add at least 30 minutes to her, her commute each way, just to save 4 cents a gallon on gas. And it's not like she drives like a semi where she's, has like, I don't know how many gallons of gas they have, like, I don't know, let's just say 100. Like hers is like a little Buick. I think, so it's like, it's not worth it, boo-boo. Like just spend a little bit more on the gas nearby and just enjoy the time that you're saving and just living life rather than commuting to fucking save gas. I don't understand.
And what about security seekers? What advice do you have for yourself?
What helped me the most was connecting with a financial planner, because that person I really felt like was an advocate and was able to explain things to me in a way that made sense. So it didn't feel like I was necessarily taking a risk because I could see the reward. And it felt as if it was like a smart but calculated risk that I was taking. And I think a lot of the times I just felt overwhelmed because I didn't understand like the different investment opportunities and retirement options that I wasn't exploring. So by working together, I felt like I was able to take riskier options, investment options, because I had more information to help me make that decision.
That makes a lot of sense. I have a friend who I believe is probably a security seeker. And when she was looking to buy a car, we were talking about different things, and she thought, man, like a $300 car payment, she just thought it was completely wild and just like way too much. And after we were having the conversation, I was like, actually, that's really good. So I think part of it is having people who you trust that you can start talking to money about, and kind of realizing you may think something's super risky, and then when you look at it in the grand scheme, or you have somebody who you can bounce the idea off of, they can let you know, actually, you're still really safe with it, and here's how it's still a good deal, or here's how it is something that is not going to completely make you go bankrupt, that kind of thing.
Because one of the things that my financial planner taught me, so when I bought my house, I remember my real estate agent's like, well, if you pay an extra mortgage payment a year, like this is how much it'll take off your loan. So I was doing that, thinking, here I am making a smart investment decision and stuff, and my financial planner was like, stop doing that. He's like, the interest on your loan is so low, and what you can earn in the market can be like 2 to 3 times that. So he's like, stop doing that. So, and at my retirement, as a result of that, has grown substantially. And, here I was thinking I was making the best financial decision for me, and I wasn't. And it wasn't until I connected with the financial planner that, again, being risk adverse, I was able to change my strategy, my retirement strategy, to something that was maybe a little bit more risky, but in the end will have a greater payout.
And the final one, if you are an avoider, get acquainted with the reality of your financial situation. Go look at it. Please do that. Also do things like set up auto pay, do things that'll make it easier for yourself. And of course, the bank notifications, which I talked about as well before. So that way you have an idea of what your balances are. If you have some big, large purchase that you weren't looking around it, money doesn't have to be scary. We make it scarier than what it actually is.
And I like what you said earlier in terms of how maybe you were a spender now, but because of your partner, you were able to take on new habits and behaviors because of him. And I think that just like in anything in life, I think it's fluid. I definitely was grounded in security seeker, but I'm also a saver as well at times, and, stuff like that. So I think understanding that you can move in between these different profiles. But I think the most important thing is that just understanding and addressing like your subconscious patterns and how you relate to money can help you develop a healthier relationship with money, one that works for your lifestyle, one that works for your comfort level, so that you continue to live the life you want.
Yeah, live the life you want, and also realize that money can be a stressor. And if you have this area of your life out of whack, it's really hard for the rest of your life not to be impacted by it. So make sure you're taking care of yourself, and that means take care of your money.
That's it for this episode. Find us on Instagram at Pivotal Moments HQ for all the behind the scenes and sister-like banter you know and love. We want to thank our producer and music director, Ron Johnson. This has been an Astronomicus DMR and Pug Productions podcast.